And I'd like to start tonight with an invocation or thought from Commissioner Watson, followed by Commissioner Neighbor leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
So my thought for today comes from Edward T. McMahon, not to be confused with the great Ed McMahon from the Carson Show, Tonight Show. He says, growth is inevitable and desirable, but destruction of community character is not. The question is not whether your part of the world is going to change. The question is how. So I just like that quote because, you know, we deal with a lot of growth and there's a lot of times that people don't love that, but change happens all around us. And it's really the reason that I got into the Planning Commission was to sort of help guide that in the city's best interest. So there's my thought for today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So it looks like we've got all the commissioners except Commissioner Webb is excused, and I suspect Commissioner Bailey might be just a few minutes late. So let's go ahead and start with consideration and action to approve the February 19th, 2025 minutes and the March 5th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at those? In particular, the new revisions to the February 19th minutes? And looked okay for everyone?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that approves the February 19th and the March 5th meeting minutes. Any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose? We do have some members here in the audience, and do we have anybody online?
We do have one, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the guidelines sort of for the public comments during meetings here. Time is made available for anyone in the audience to address the commission concerning matters pertaining to city business. Citizens will be asked to limit their remarks or questions to 5 minutes each. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, such as pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and the city they reside in before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, state your agreement and avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the Planning Commission. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to open the meeting for any public comments for items that are not on the agenda tonight. You will have an opportunity if you're here for an agenda item to speak at that time. Okay. The one online, John?
No raised hands.
Okay. So going to the first administrative item, this is a consideration and action regarding an administrative application, site plan approval for the Barker Depot dual drive-through located at approximately 350 East, 2600 North. And the presenter tonight is Ryan Nunn, planning staff.
Thank you. Yeah, this site plan review, it's for a single tenant with a drive-through and then a 3-tenant building with another drive-through. Located just off 2600, center of the block between 300 and 400 East or Washington Boulevard. The applicant is Ryan Forsyth or Leading Tech is the company. This site plan is part of it's also being accompanied with a subdivision, a minor subdivision, since it's for a 3-lot It'll involve these two buildings, which will each be on their own, and then as well as a corner lot for for the America First branch. That subdivision is being handled administratively since there's no road dedications and it's under that 10 lot requirement. So just to make you aware, that is being handled, and so we're looking at the site plan review for those dual drive-through commercial buildings. Uh, the the applicable ordinances for commercial uses covers a lot. And so if you were able to read through the staff report, it's kind of extensive, showing all of that code, but really there's a few just very applicable points to make. The development meets most of the code very well. Let's see. It's a permitted use from what they've showed us so far. It'll be some fast food and potentially like a gym studio as well. Our commercial setback codes, they all meet. We really have they're not very what's the word?
Not very restrictive.
Yeah, they're not very restrictive on the setbacks. They're meeting that. They're meeting their building height code for all of our commercial code. In our 11-10 Article A, which goes over the zones, there are some applicable codes specifically, and what you'll notice in our commercial code is it's a little redundant. There'll be similar points made across 11-10 and as well as 11-11. And we'll go over those. So right away, these buildings, our code requires for anything off Washington as well as 2600 that face or that face those roads should have some type of public entrance as well as windows. In our review there, the renderings didn't show that, but we made that aware of the applicant, and as you may have heard, we've gotten some new designs where they'll really the side facing the road is the back side of these buildings. So we did discuss that, and you'll have to remind me the term, but some type of like faux or fake windows could be added to kind of meet that intent of the code. Thank you, John. John's pulling those up now. And there are material that'll really mimic windows and meet that code for us.
And the code requirement is glazing. And one of the ways that they get around this, and I think I just heard Chad say it, and Alexis with Leading Tech was talking about it earlier, spandrel glass, which is an opaque glass. It's usually used to conceal structural elements or mechanical systems between floors. So it does appear to be glass. It is structural in nature. It's built into the building, and it would meet our requirement for glazing. But because of the orientation of these buildings, them being the drive-through, we really don't have a high expectation of pedestrian connectivity or walking, from 2600 into the buildings on that side. But it would maintain the architectural look and kind of feel of that rather than just a big blank wall on the backside. So this is the example, and then we have a real life example that John can pull up on Google Street View to show where Riverdale City required this on the businesses that sit in front of Hobby Lobby over in that area of Riverdale Road. So all of that is essentially spandrel glass until you get to the corner. I think the Sleep Number bed store and another one does have an actual glass corner. But for the most part, that's all faux glazing and like back of house stuff. So that'd be storage or refrigeration units or other things for those restaurants. But it maintains some form of, glass-like look.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Scott and John, for helping explain that. So we've discussed that with the applicant that they'll meet that window requirement. On the single tenant building, it does need a door just to meet the code as well. So those are just some conditions of approval to meet that. So they've already addressed one. It's really, the 3 tenant does show that door, which meets the public or the like a building entrance intent, but the single tenant will need that as well. Moving into our 11-10C code, which really goes over a lot of the architecture and design of these buildings as well. So it's meeting the code really well because of the designs. They'll alternate with colors as well as structure with their structure designs. Will be alternating and complementary. And here it does repeat again. It does mention having like showing some type of entrance off the road. So it does repeat that way again. But otherwise, it does also mention some type of street or site amenities required every 50 feet on a road. So that would be another condition of approval we'd look at as, what type of site amenity should be added. Our code specifies maybe a park bench, a trash receptacle, something just, as people are here using it, off the sidewalk, they could use something. I think it even includes part of the landscaping if they do decorative trees, can be part of those site amenities. The remaining is found in 11-11, which goes over streetlights, trash enclosures, as well as streetscape standards. We recommend those all being handled during the building permit process. Getting those designs of this trash enclosures. We have the locations, but really having the designs and then having those be approved as administratively as part of the building permit. With the parking, their proposed uses, they do show that they will meet our off-street parking standard code with a parking lot per square footage for the fast foods, and then per square footage for that gym studio. Let's see. And then the last thing that is also covered is in a couple of these sections is like pedestrian interconnectivity. This is a point we've made to the applicant as well, is the code specifies, having some walkways, some pathways for people coming off the sidewalk to get to these businesses. And that was lacking in the landscape plan. So we've mentioned, we've encouraged, with an updated plan showing the MACU, the Mountain America next door, does have a walkway connecting to the sidewalk. And so just having like a crosswalk through their drive-through on that west side to meet that. And then as well, including some type of walkway from the sidewalk on the east side, just so that, pedestrians aren't walking either in the drive-through or in the drive aisles coming off the road. And the applicant has expressed that they can do that, but we recommend it as part of as a condition to be met, and that staff can approve with an updated plan. With that, I can take any questions. We also have a couple representatives here who can speak further as well if you have more questions. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions before we ask the applicant to come up?
Maybe after the applicant.
Yeah, if we could have the applicant come up, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? Good. I guess I'm not sure. Am I just you want me to just present information or?
Yep. And can you give us name and who you represent?
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Alexis Riggs and I'm representing RKF Properties, the landowner, and then Leading Tech as the, I guess, GC and developer.
Yeah, I guess the only question I have is there were quite a number of conditions of approval listed in our
Mhm.
staff report. And I just wanted to get an idea, you guys are okay with all these conditions of approval?
Yes, the pedestrian access, I don't see any issues, adding the hatching through the drive-through, as well as trying to, either coordinate, adding that drive aisle or that, sidewalk in that east, right, where it butts to that.
Mhm.
Or, they've even, planning department's always also suggested that maybe we work with, America First Credit Union and possibly show something there that can be joint between the two of us. So I just need to communicate. We just got these comments, so I just need to communicate with America First to see that possibility, and which route we want to go. But I don't foresee that being an issue. The only concern I have is just, we have some landscaping that's in that island, that if we did do it there, we would have to either try and move or get some type of variance on. No?
No, so pedestrian walkways, as along with things like plazas and places you put a bench and seating and that sort of thing, even if it's hardscape, can be considered landscaping in our code through our commercial design standards. So I
Okay.
think we'd be able to make that exception. And I'd also believe you're over the 10%. You're not right at 10%. So you've got a little bit of wiggle room, but that part wouldn't require a
Okay.
variance.
Perfect. But yeah, as far as the spandrel glass, I don't foresee any issues adding that to the rear of the building. The side amenities, we can work with planning, to figure out what needs to be added. Trying to think the other ones.
Everything else looked pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but we're willing to make those adjustments and get that worked out with the planning department.
I guess I would just ask in terms of, so we're looking, you have to increase the glazing on the street facing side.
Uh-huh.
Is it also, would be like, you'd have signs on that side as well, that it just essentially looks like it could be the front, but it's just not?
Correct. I believe the tenant, that will kind of be up to the tenant when they submit their signage plans, but I don't foresee I foresee them adding signage along that frontage. That's like a main thing they'll want to see.
Yeah.
And they'll present that when they do their interior drawings. They'll present signage for that portion of it.
Okay, I think, yeah, just a big thought, and I think you guys are aware of this because it will be required, but it's just along 2600. We don't want it to feel like it is the back of buildings. And I think we saw a great example in Riverdale of how to offset that.
Yeah.
But like, it's just the heart of the city, and looking like a wall of the back of the building is a really closed off, disconnected, appearance, if that makes sense. So I'm just hoping you guys are super mindful of that, moving forward, that we want it to appear pleasant and inviting and welcoming.
Yes, and we are for sure going to do that. The only difficult part, as kind of stated, we have drive-through users.
Mhm.
And so a lot of that stuff will be back of house. And so that's why we presented the spandrel glass. So it looks as if it's bright and airy, but you just can't see into their like mechanical equipment and all their storage and stuff, because that to me just wouldn't look very good. So that's why we presented the spandrel glass option.
Great.
But yeah, we're willing to work to try to make it look pleasing, also aesthetically pleasing, to conform with the rest of the building, So yeah, we'd be willing to do that.
I had a question. The intent is that these two buildings, we would have a maximum of 2 users that were some kind of food establishment?
Yeah, so the single tenant space with the drive-through is a food user. And then 2 of the 3 spaces on the multi-tenant will be food users, and then the third will be like a gym type use. And they will have a drive-through for one of those users.
Because I noticed on the utility plan that we had 2 grease traps for each of the sewers coming out of the buildings, but the third one didn't. And I wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be a food use.
Yeah, so typically what they do on a multi-tenant building is they have one grease trap for tenants. We just make sure we get the load and we get the proper infrastructure installed for them to both go through that grease trap, and then
Okay.
so that way they're not emptying more than one.
Yeah, because the third one, it looked like it had an independent sewer lateral. not
Yes, so
running
there-
through the grease trap.
Yeah, so the grease trap on the multi-tenant would be used by the 2 users together. We would just make sure we get the proper size of it for their loads. And then the single tenant would have its own. So they would all food users would filter through a grease trap.
So
Yep.
there's actually 3 food uses.
Yes, 3 food uses,
Okay.
but only 2 grease traps, and that's being because the multi-tenant will share that grease trap through the engineering side of it. Yep.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Had a question maybe for Ryan.
Yeah.
This is a 3-lot subdivision, did you say?
Yes, so you can kind of see it on the plans here. To the east is the America First.
Yeah, it doesn't show the whole lot on that. I was just wondering, like where the old America First building is, and then it's showing like a parking on the south part of that. Is that a separate lot?
Yeah, and that's actually, that'll be another site plan review we'll have in a few weeks for the America First that we'll look at. And yeah, so their plan is to build a new branch on the corner and to demolish that old existing one.
And,
Um,
and also to answer just one question, because typically planning commission would see the subdivisions and it would come in as a preliminary subdivision to planning commission. But this is under 10 lots with no roadway dedication, so it's administrative. So the subdivision was given as like an FYI, and we have a condition of approval of the site plan to say this site plan is approved or recommended for approval if the planning commission approves it, but you have to finish your subdivision process, which has been submitted to the city administratively. So you as the planning commission won't see it, but we're reviewing these 3 lots, America First Credit Union, and then the 2, drive-through lots as they relate to the whole subdivision itself. And your portion of it is the administrative approval of the site plan to include like building elevations. We don't approve colors, but parking, landscaping amounts, pedestrian amenities, and those items that Ryan had stated. But in this case, because 2600 is already the full right-of-way width, Washington's the full right-of-way width, you won't see
Yeah.
the
I just
subdivision.
noticed there was like, it looked like a lot line between the parking.
Yeah,
and the
and that's,
American
and
Fir-
that's a great catch. So there was, and we spoke with Alexis today, and it was the difference between when you overlaid the 2, the difference of the site plan as it's kind of been amended over the last several months. So they will make the subdivision match the site plan. So the site plan with the parking, there won't be like off-site parking or an off-site amenity there. The lot will encompass all of its
Okay.
parking.
All right.
And that's a note, it's written into the staff report, but is worth noting that today we don't have any parking issues, right? There's still tons of development available, but as we continue to go, we're going to cross a threshold where some of those parking stalls are going to need to be counted twice. So we'll have shared use parking agreements, and it'll be a consideration in the future for the planning commission. Because if it was like all food users that go in, then we'd start running out of parking. But generally, we'll see some like 9 to 5 users and then some, more like 5 to 9 PM type of uses. So the shared use parking will work.
Besides the shared use parking, do we have cross-access agreements?
We do. So the subdivision plat itself has a full cross-access utility easement, and all the roads internally are private, but the sewer mains and all the laterals, or sewer mains and water mains all run in that cross-access that runs all the way from America First's parcel out to 300 East. And I love that you looked through the improvement drawings and found the grease trap. That's like part of, this is essentially it was the subdivision submittal in addition to like the site plan was a page of the submittal. So that was a great catch, and our city engineers reviewing that. And we've had several comments back and forth between what the subdivision will look like and improvements.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody from the public have any comments on this item? You were here for this, sir. Okay. All right, guys, any further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve the site plan for the Barker Depot dual drive-through. Oh, subject to the conditions in the staff report. Sorry, I almost left that off.
I will second.
All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's unanimous for approval of the site plan, subject to conditions in in the staff report. Okay, thank you so much. All right, the next item, we're going to cover, I guess, a review of the Wasatch Front Regional Council vision. And the presenter for that will be Scott Hess.
Well, first, before that, and maybe it's because they put the term economic development in my title, and I have to give an update to the council on our quarterly economic development report that this is one of those, that particular item feels like it, should have required like a clap at the end. It's been 8 years on the Barker Depot that Leading Tech has been working on combining all of those properties, acquiring it from the
Yes.
property owners. We saw the first site plan application for that come in April of last year. And then those users ultimately pulled out and fell apart. And so this has been like a marathon, not a sprint, to get to this point. And now to see right on the heels of it, at the next meeting, you'll have America First Credit Union site plan. If it's not next, like the first meeting of April, it'll be the second. So collectively, you're going to see a lot come out of the ground sort of all at once, it'll feel like, but it's been the last 2.5 years worth of work and discussion. So it was a big deal. I realize it's an administrative item. Ryan had a huge lift in reviewing all of that code and working with the developer so closely. They brought in a set of plans that was really compliant. That was a short list. There were several conditions of approval, but the reality is there weren't a lot of items to iron out and work out between the developer and the city. So thank you for your review. And it's a kind of a big, that is a big deal. That will be a big deal for North Ogden. So I just want to recognize that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be beautiful there.
And then the other is, so Wasatch Front Regional Council is our 5-county metropolitan planning organization, which is a lot of words that probably don't mean a whole lot to you. But what an MPO does is they are required in all statistical areas across the country of 50,000 people or more, or areas that have air quality non-attainment. So Utah has 4 MPOs. You got the Dixie MPO down south, the Wasatch Front Regional Council that covers our area, Mountain Land Association of Governments, which is like Utah County and kind of down around to Santaquin. And then up in the Cache Valley area, they have the Cache MPO. And the Cache MPO, interestingly enough, is not a statistical area over 50,000, but is a non-area or a non-air quality attainment area. And it's because they get these horrible inversions from being in that kind of bowl shape between the mountains. So they are an MPO as well. The Wasatch Front Regional Council's charge is to help coordinate the expenditure of large amounts of transportation funding across multiple regions. And 20 years ago, they kind of got into the land use game. So what they do is they look at 25 to 40 years out. And right now, I think they're on Wasatch Choice 2050, and it's going to be extended to like Wasatch Choice 2055. So they're looking 25 or 30 years out, and they use the state provided county control totals for population, which is essentially the estimate for the total number of people that will be here in our region by that point. And they will take all of the cities, so that's like 60 plus cities and unincorporated areas. They take all of their general plans and they sort of meld together all the land uses, and they do an estimate of, is there enough commercial? Is there enough multifamily? Is there enough residential to meet our ultimate county control totals in the future? And that's why they changed this map, and they ask the cities for suggestions on what they call centers. And there are different center types. So neighborhood center is small scale, typically walkable. Think like maybe 9th and 9th in Salt Lake City, if you've been there, or Cafe Mercantile in Ogden. If you had a few of those, like that's kind of like the neighborhood commercial level of center that you'd be looking at, all the way up to regional centers, which is like really Salt Lake City and Provo is the beginning now, kind of to grow into one of those. So they've asked staff and to look at the vision, and I've got, with John, I've asked, I think you got, if you got my text, we got the general plan. So we have our current future land use map, which was adopted in 2022. I can show you what the Wasatch Choice 2040 or Wasatch Choice 2050 current vision is, the adopted vision, and then the suggested amendments. And it's not an obligation that local general plans match the Wasatch Front Regional Council's vision. You know, they are a third party. They aren't a land use authority. But what it does for us is when we apply for state and federal transportation dollars that WFRC administers, the closer our land use vision identifies with theirs, the more likely we are to get funded. And the significance of that funding is that it paid for the Southtown Center plan. We have applied for it in the past. It paid for Washington Boulevard's reconstruction and widening from 2600 North up to Alberta, was a WFRC grant that we received 8 years ago, and it takes 6 years to receive those funds. We have $300,000 currently pending for next year to do pedestrian improvements at 3100 North, 2750 and Mountain Road that connect to the canal. I can't call it a canal trail anymore because they don't recognize it as a trail, but at crossings near the canal. So we are frequent flyers of Wasatch Front Regional Council funds. It's close to my heart. I worked there for 5 years and did 2 different jobs for them, and would just love to take a look at these maps and consider really your position and your recommendations, because this could affect our future land use map and general plan map as we might make changes. So John, if you want to pull up let's do the current vision first. So the one that's existing, that's the new one. So right now, these orange blobs, and to orient you, can you put your cursor like at 2600 in Washington? So essentially that's 2600 in Washington, and then Pleasant View Drive is going northwest up from there. And that orange area is all identified as a neighborhood, like neighborhood commercial. So the commercial level that we have in North Ogden, kind of suburban commercial, is their base level, like base or second tier level commercial. We don't have big box, we don't have freeway oriented, we don't have buildings that are 4, 5, 6 stories tall. So it's all pretty, small scale commercial. And that is envisioned all the way down 2600 to hit the freeway interchange, and then a little bit further west. And if you go to today, or what the proposal is they've added 3 centers. So one is at kind of near the trout farm, like central area of the city. It would be along the Monroe corridor, and right now that's open and unincorporated county. So we would have a huge amount of legislative ability to create zoning around that area. The other is out on Mountain Road near the not Posse Grounds. Do we call it the Posse Grounds? Does that work? Okay. Yeah. So, and the burn 2750 in Mountain Road near the trailhead of Coldwater Creek Trail. So that area, that is actually, those are parcels made up that are owned by Ogden or North Ogden City. So we again would have a really lot of control in that particular parcel. And then the furthest one north is right at the end of Lakeview Drive, and it would be Mountain Road. Was previously a parcel owned by the school district that they had envisioned as maybe an elementary school way up north, that's been resold to the Marriotts. So the Marriotts own that. And for those of you who were on the Planning Commission when we did the 2022 future land use map, staff had proposed some central city commercial areas. One was at 17th South in Monroe, and then we had one a little bit further up north near 3100 in the mouth of the canyon, but we hadn't envisioned one that far up the mountain. So for the Planning Commission, I guess the question would be, what are your thoughts on that? You live in this city. What are your thoughts of central city kind of commercial? And we could make it could potentially be walkable, mixed use, small scale, 9th and 9th in Salt Lake, or 15th and 15th in Salt Lake has a really cute little bookstore and a little restaurant and like an old convenience store. I don't even think they don't sell gas anymore, but it's just small scale, community residential. And then same thing is up on the hill, as you get further up, um, it becomes a bit of a drive to get off the hill and down to one of our two grocery stores. So should we be considering commercial uses of some sort up the hill, up near Mountain Road, that could maybe pull in some of those or northeast Pleasant View residents, our northern and northwestern residents, to not all have to come down right to our city core and locate there. So I'm supportive of ideas that are along this line. Staff isn't going to say these are the places that it should be. But staff is generally supportive of it, especially looking at, we're going to move from 21,000 to about 40,000 people. And we need to be thinking about our commercial tax base. And that is probably, we will utilize Washington to the fullest over the next, 10 or 15 years. And what do we do beyond that? And I think the Monroe corridor today is representative of it's not developed, but it's farmland, and people probably can't really conceive of that being commercial areas, but on a long haul or long view, should we be thinking about that corridor, the Mountain Road corridor, as little pockets of correctly oriented commercial uses? So I'd love to hear your thoughts and consideration. And then the city council will be hearing next Tuesday kind of what your planning commission thoughts were on this. And then we will give our comments back to Wasatch Front Regional Council. They're mid-cycle of adopting their new plan, which won't happen until 2027. Like we have time, but they've just asked for comments. So
up on Mountain Road by the horse arena, by the green landfill, you said that has been redesignated by the Wasatch Regional Council as a what kind of?
So a neighborhood center, which can be a lot of different uses, but it could be like a mixed use area. So it might have multifamily, but it's really like a commercial center, a place that you could go and, buy a snack.
Purpose the.
Not necessarily. We own, if John could open up I don't know if you've got it queued up, but sorry to make you go through a bunch of maps, but I'll show you the parcels that we own currently, or we can show you right about. So the city owns the trailhead, we own the burn where the green waste pit is, and then the equestrian center. So we own all of that, all the way down to the water detention on the south side. So there's a significant amount of land there. The place where the disc golf course is at is owned currently and zoned residential single family R12, 12.5. So that'd be 12,500 square foot lots, essentially quarter acre lots, single family. But does that represent the highest and best use for the city? And at the mouth of the canyon on Mountain Road, which we know is, as it develops out, will be a regional north-south transportation corridor for the city.
So Scott, you also said that by participating and agreeing with them, you can access the DOT funds. And I think you said the Mountain Road also.
Yeah, so we can.
That would be developed in order to support that in the future.
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
And so we could apply, like, if we had a center up in this area and we wanted to get money from the city, money from Wasatch Front Regional Council to complete sections of Mountain Road, the alignment of our general plan with their centers map just gives us extra points. It's helpful in their rating criteria. It's not an obligation. Like you can receive WFRC funding without your land use map and their vision map aligning directly. But it's helpful for their regional visioning. And if we are not supportive of it between the Planning Commission and City Council, they'll pull it off their map too. Like they won't leave stuff on there that's fully not supported by the locals. And it's why their vision is updated every 4 years. Like they're on a continual consideration and update basis.
It's also important to note that the green waste pit portion of this is deed restricted to open space. So anything that would potentially be suggested in this area, this would have to stay unbuilt.
So it'd be a park or something, swimming pool or something like that.
Yeah. Not a swimming pool.
Yeah, that was
Maybe
before
that
my
would be-
time.
Yeah.
I'll retract that.
Yeah. But no, like a you know, I mean, it could be anything that doesn't have buildings on it and and then it remains in city ownership, if that makes sense. So it would stay a community asset.
And the arena, is there any restrictions on the usage of that at all?
On the which part?
On the horse arena or whatever that's called?
I'm not aware of any. It doesn't mean there aren't some that I'm not aware of. But if we were going to do something down here, we would likely look at getting a full title report, you know, spending the money and just having someone look at it. There was a lawsuit when this went in, the power station, by the kids of the people who gave us the green waste pit. They thought they had given the whole area and said, no, you can't sell it to Rocky Mountain Power. And that's why I know that there's a line between the two. But at least the green waste pit would end up a park. I mean, that's how it'll end up.
And that would be a park that also is not doubling as a retention pond. correct?
Right. There's not necessarily a good way to get water out of this area for how low it is. So it would
That
likely not
Could
function.
be a really, because that'd be the only, if we think about switching these areas into some commercial and some different types of things, a park would be a nice pickup over in this section if we're looking at this mountain road area. A lot of our parks are difficult for youth sports because they do double as the retention pond, meaning they're not flat necessarily. And then also when the water has filled in the spring, the fields are muddy, et cetera. I'm sure you guys are very much aware of that. And so anyway, picking up a park in that area would be very good for, I think, the community, especially if the south end of that had more commercial or, sorry, what was the term you used, Scott? It's neighborhood.
It's a neighborhood center is the
Neighborhood
term that
center.
WFRC has. And that's a defined term. If you go into Wasatch, WFRC.org, and you can spend a bunch of time on there looking at what Wasatch Choice 2050 means and has, meant for the area. So, yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a neighborhood commercial area.
Not necessarily. It can be a mix of uses. They typically lean like there is some tax-based producing or some commercial area. Some of the neighborhood centers that are on the west side of Davis County that I'm familiar with, like one is an animal hospital. You get a lot of the little like dental offices and small small businesses like title offices, that sort of thing that aren't necessarily sales tax producing, but are office-based type of uses that are in single-story buildings embedded in neighborhoods. And the idea with some of that is just that it helps reduce the loads on, like Washington Boulevard doesn't have to be the only corridor where you have to go to get everything in the city, which is pretty well the case now, except for trout out of the trout farm. Everything else, you pretty well have to go to Washington Boulevard.
On the Monroe expansion out, so I see where it's ended.
Yep.
But that is all available property potentially to build another type center like this, you're saying?
It is, yeah. And the city, luckily, with their, forward thinking, utilized some money years ago, 15 years ago or more.
Yeah.
So they purchased the majority of the right of way of Monroe. So the city owns almost the entire corridor of Monroe, short of just a few small parcels. And the way that would work then is a developer that has property that abuts Monroe would be required to build it, but they aren't required to pay for it. So it has saved a lot of developer money and it's made it buildable, but we don't have the capital dollars right now to go out and build this 80-foot right of way the entire length.
Is the Monroe Boulevard, where does that end?
So Jackson 800 east, which is Jackson going up into the cove, is Monroe. So from there at 2850 north and Jackson or 800, it comes through a residential area and then south through and sort of snakes down through, and then it picks up at Carson. There's a development Carson Jones has done. It comes through the city and then joins directly into Monroe as it is now. So eventually you'll be able to take Monroe all the way up out of Ogden City up into the cove.
Is it possible in our planning, I know it's probably not feasible to go in and rezone these areas now for some kind of mixed use or commercial. But is it feasible in our planning to say, this is our intention for the future? And so then when the residential neighborhood or the 3-story apartment developers come in and want to build there,
Yep.
even though it might, we could refer to some plan and say, well, our intention is that this is going to be this commercial neighborhood center.
So if you'll pull the general plan, John, I mean, that is literally what our general plan should do. So right now, our general plan in all of those areas, and we need to take that little blue square off on the top northwest because that's no longer a civic use owned by the school. But everything is contemplated to be essentially like low-level, low-density, single-family residential
Right.
neighborhoods. So if you were to come back in and in some of these areas, say this pocket, which might even be unincorporated county right now, but it is in our annexation declaration, so we put a future land use on it. This area should be thought of as mixed use or commercial or something different. And we could keep the terminology we currently have, or we could create a new future land use district area. And then when a developer comes in to develop it and they say, we want 1/4 acre single family lots, we would be able to say that doesn't meet our general plan requirement, thou shalt put in and then have some requirement. But the general plan, again, we are by state code required to have a general plan. The general plan allows us to then apply zoning, and zoning allows us to control what the direct land use is. But in not every community is there a direct link between the zoning on the ground and the general plan. And there often shouldn't be, because we don't want to upzone agricultural pieces to commercial and really hose people on their property taxes, but we do want to think about where they should go. So the general plan should always be ahead of your zoning map in some ways. But then when a developer comes in and applies for a rezone that aligns with the general plan, the idea is that they should have some level of assurance or confirmation that the city has thought that this should be commercial here. This should be this use here. So it's reasonably positive, or I have a good idea that I'm going to get this rezone approved. And I think North Ogden, and I've worked for a few communities, North Ogden is one that does a really good job of sticking to its general plan, of utilizing it in those rezone discussions. And a real good example is that whole kind of pink, that soft pink area on the southern portion of the city, the extreme south. That area is to be annexed, or was annexed in under multifamily, and due to the general plan, the planning commission and the city council both aligned and agreed that that's what that use coming in. So West State's annexation came in as R4 multifamily, which agreed with the general plan. And had we been based off of the 2015 general plan at that time, 10 years ago, it was low-level single-family residential, and that changed in 2022. So these, it's a dynamic plan. It should be open every, before 10 years for sure. Like every 4 to 5 years, you should be updating it.
Could this neighborhood center concept, and it sounds like we could even carve out, like you said, something that's a future use, different
Yeah.
district, if you will. Could that also maybe be a place to tie in like a missing middle conversation? Because it seems like lately in North Ogden, we have single family housing and then really, kind of more these intense, dense housing situations. So anyway, one thought is just maybe this is an opportunity to look at some of those in that training we went through,
Absolutely.
some different housing types that are somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
I
anyway,
love
go
that
ahead.
idea. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to quickly note, the one thing is this middle section, the only thing I would wonder is the one that's next to Barker Park area. In our general plan right now, that's the Coldwater District. Our intention was to keep that more open space and somewhat more rural feeling. So that would certainly be a very large change and deviation potentially from what the general plan at least has right now.
And interestingly enough, there's a pretty good section of that is unincorporated Weber County that has been applied for annexation as, decent sized lot, single family. So this will bring up an interesting question because it meets the general plan. We have no requirement of provide open space, or like we exchange this amount of open space for this amount of residential housing units. So we've seen the concept plan at the annexation level, and that's going next week to city council to be accepted as an annexation. So we will have that conversation about what, what does that mean to have in the general plan, the Coldwater District requesting a more rural feel, and what the plan right now is essentially kind of what we've got now, single family homes that are front to back across that property.
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Baker?
mean, we've talked about Ninth and Ninth, and I've lived in Seattle, and there's these little pocket neighborhoods, and it's fairly organic. I mean, you can plant the seed, but you have to, you gotta keep your feelers out. I do know that something that Salt Lake City has done that I believe actually comes back through the planning commission and the planning department is on these types of city-owned property. I mean, we'll call the equestrian area. It's fulfilled its use, right? And you don't want to just repeat and sell it off to some person for quarter-acre lots. We have landowners that have those rights already established. But what Salt Lake has done, and the last I heard it was relatively successful, is they had their RFP program where the property gets posted on the website, and developers, architecture firms, anyone with a business idea puts together a package and proposes an idea, and it comes back on the city to approve that. And a lot of the developments, interesting developments that have happened in Salt Lake City on these RFPs haven't been the big developers. It's been someone like me, an architect that has a funky idea that is able to get investing or money behind it with the RFP, but the city backs them on that project and helps them. I even think they issued loans, and I'm not proposing that, but it was interesting because it kept the control in a committee, right? Hey, we like this. This is actually a pretty good idea. And you're not just bringing one person's idea in. You send the RFP out. This is the property. These are the documents. We've done all of the legwork. We have civil, we have drainage, we have all of that. Propose a project, and then you get 10, 12, 5, who knows, but you're not just choosing from one project. You're actually comparing it against others, so you actually know which one is there. And so I've always found that to be intriguing, and I've always looked on different cities' websites, just board or whatever, to see if there's any RFPs and whatnot. But I think you'd get a lot of people who are hustling that have funky ideas that are looking to do that. Because if you look, we have that the bike trail or the Coldwater Trail, that parking area. I mean, I was kind of having a side chat with Steve. I mean, you could imagine someone would want a smoothie or a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You can't really tell what the culture would say, but sort of a field of dreams. But if you can leave some of the control in the city, I think these lots and some previous meetings where we had those steep lots, or even that one subdivision where it was this weird triangle lot and the buildable area was legit on paper, but in actuality it wasn't. I think those are the opportunities where you go for these pocket areas and you let people roll the dice on some of them, and you'll let the city say that's what we want, and we're going to help you do it. And so anyway, that's kind of my spiel, but I've seen success in Salt Lake and Seattle in this exact situation. I'm going to keep blabbing, sorry. I think a successful one in our area, when I was a kid, it was Teddy Bears, and now it's Straw Market, but it thrived and failed and thrived and failed. There were baseball games at the park, and then the city pulled the baseball games, and then they're not selling suckers anymore, so they go out of business. And Straw Market has come in, and now you see Straw Market in Salt Lake. You see it in, I don't know, I've seen a couple just around the state, and they've got an anchor, and you can go in there and get ramen noodles and eggs and milk and things like that. But that was a little organic, and and now there's that new shipping container drive-through soda shop. You don't know what people are going to do, but I do. I'm usually pretty anti like city control on all of these, but on these city-owned properties, I think you have to look at it and say, we own this property. We are the landowner. We have private property rights, even though we're a public entity. We want to control the development on these. I think you just switch gears and you can totally justify this control because it's your development and you're trying to get tax base and revenue and things like that. So I think
yeah.
that last point I made is pretty key here. You're now just saying this is our property. We want to make the most money. That's okay. You know, we want to make the most community connections and whatnot. And I actually think that Mountain Road development, I drive past it almost every day from my home. And you know, they had the gondola idea and stuff, and I don't know what, you know.
Be careful on that one.
But those are the seeds, right? Someone had a radical idea and everyone was like, this is too radical. But if you actually think about it, it's like there's a dreamer out there wanting to put a gondola in the equestrian area. So I would highly recommend researching the RFP program that Salt Lake City has done and see how they've financed, and there's been some really interesting townhomes, missing middle, coffee shops, you know. I mean, I know in our area it's not going to be bars or anything, but along those lines, right? Of let's go down and get a sandwich with the kids on the bike.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't get that opportunity. And when you do that, you bump into a neighbor, you don't even get a tax base there. Business ideas and other things will come about it. And I think this is my last thing. I think if you do something with a piece of ground like that, I think you'll break down some big boundaries of people that say, I don't want this crappy lot in my subdivision with cars all around it parked no, well, look what down there, look what they get. Their land values have gone up. So I think that's a good opportunity, that one piece of land. I think we're maybe undervaluing it in the conversation right now. If you could really pull something out of there that is fun and successful, I think it could change. It could have that effect on the Monroe. You're doing a case study.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And especially where the city owns the property, that we would be in control. So the RFP process is a really creative way to do that. And I'll relay that to the council. And then we have some in the other building that's now a conference room where we used to meet and do city council and planning commission. We have some historical photos, and I think it's Pettingill's Orchard. There's that large building. And these used to be organic. You know, before we had every piece of property you can think of now is essentially owned and zoned. Like there's a land use underlying it. And I don't think there's really anything left other than maybe some federal lands in Utah that aren't that way. But we had a really large fruit packing operation way up north that now would seem really odd if you were to put like an industrial fruit packing plant north of, 3550. But it used to exist. And you've got little fruit stands that pop up on Mountain Road and sell pumpkins and these little ideas. I think the Webb's Flower Farm is another creative one. They've got a business license and they have this beautiful flower area off 2600 that's really creative and unique. And Chad, what you said is you don't know what ideas are out there, right? So that trailhead, by our city engineer's suggestion, and I was talked to him as well, we left a little pad with a power location there in hopes that in the future there might be somebody who wants to rent out some e-bikes or have a little pop-up shop or something there located at the trailhead. So we accommodated it, and maybe something will come in the future, and maybe like an RFP process would help us create that or bring that use into the city.
And one thing I'd add too is with that parking lot, and this is, I know has been in the RFP, the city does a market analysis and you can tell people right away how many cars come to that parking lot. You now know potential businesses and people with ideas that, hey, there's 150 cars every day from 9 a.m. to 4.
Right.
That's data that is useful in developing these ideas. So.
The other thing to think about is in the future, when Mountain Road is completed and Monroe Road is completed, the whole purpose of that is to direct some of the traffic off of Washington Boulevard and have it be relieved by those corridors. And the hope is that there's a lot more traffic
Mhm.
going along those corridors that, it would be nice to see, I hate to say gas station, but somewhere like
Yeah.
some
And
some amenities
Along
that,
those corridors too, it's beneficial to place these neighborhood areas because that's where the traffic is going to come up these collector roads. These ones that are a little larger than the residential's.
And, we talked about that open space too. That's a decent example. It's the only one I can think of. In Waco, Texas, this designer gal bought like an old silo and put up little shops all around it. And in between the shops, that open space, it's just a turf field.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just little kids playing. You get your ice cream, you go roll around on it or whatever. I think those are the types of ideas that when you think open space, you can get by with that open space as being auxiliary and ancillary, I guess, to the development that goes on. It doesn't just need bushes and boardwalks and things like that. It could be a little mini park the little 3-year-olds could play soccer on Saturday while everyone's having their coffee and their ice cream cone, So anyway, I look forward to this one. I mean, I don't chirp up all the time, but this is something that I think would be a wasted opportunity. I don't think we need to even propose ideas. I think we
Is-
can Kevin Costner this.
Are there any areas that are proposed, like that northern area, that are just not feasible or not supportable by the planning commission? I just want to relay to the council parts of, bits of this conversation. I'll encourage them to go back and watch the video, and because it's, just a few days basically. But are there any that you think that is just an untenable idea and there's no way, not possible, that we could relay to the council, and then we'll get those notes back to WFRC?
You're talking about the Mountain Road and Monroe?
Yeah, well, it's
It's the
really, you've got
high-
Mountain Road
Oh,
and then
the
that
high
one way up
one.
north.
Oh, the
Yeah, we
high-
haven't spoke to the far north.
as we start, that it's only going to continue the housing developments up in that area. And as Mountain Road kind of curves around there. So like you said, it's a long way to, down to Smith's Corners.
Does that property front on Mountain Road there?
That
The
parcel does
school?
not. No, that parcel has a few homes that were in between Mountain
Oh, that's
Road
what
and
I
it.
thought.
But there's a ton of open available land to be developed by the Marriotts that's open, that they might, we could collectively consider what are some locations that make sense.
Do you think that's a
Sorry.
20-year plan on those particular? Are we talking like 10 years right now in terms of some of this?
Yeah, our general plan should look 10 to 15 years out. Wasatch Fronts is further. So for us in growth and thinking about it, it depends on housing interest rates. Like if we were still in 3% interest rates, I'd tell you 10 years.
Yeah.
At 7% interest rates, it's probably 20 in the current building climate. But I've also watched 08 happen and watched the climb back up, and then
Yeah.
COVID
So-
happen and then the climb back up. And so I've been able to watch this over the last 17 years of being a planner, and it's cyclical. So
Yeah.
today's answer is very different than what 5 years from now's answer is going to be on how long until the build out. We have a development agreement with Marriott Land Company that was done for all those Northview phases. I don't know, how long, John? 2000, it's like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, they did a development agreement and
Mm.
probably told the city, we'll build this all out in 20 years. And they're on phase 10 of like 25 phases. So they keep picking away at it as the economy allows them to, and what they can do in small components of that plan as it marches up the hill. But there have been several conversations between developers and the city on what happens north of the Mountain Road. Mountain Road corridor. And it's coming faster than I think a lot of people think it will. We'll get up above Long Bench before long, is my guess.
And just to clarify, is the Mountain Road corridor, is that the Skyline Drive that's going to
Yes.
continue on to Wellers?
Not the what line drive? That's not,
Skyline Drive?
that's a joke. I think there's going to be like a city sponsored pickleball event or something between Pleasant View and North Ogden to choose. What road do we choose? What
Well, I
name
mean,
do
the
we
two,
choose?
the two
What
connect
name?
and go up
40
and over into
Skyline.
Willard.
Yeah, 4300 North is Skyline Drive, and it connects to our Mountain Road. And so at some point for public safety, we're going to need to rename it. And, you know, my
Road's cooler.
unpopular suggestion is that Harrisville, Pleasant View, and North Ogden should become North Pleasantville or something like that. Like it should be one city.
Nah.
But at any rate, you're right. Skyline Drive and Mountain Road touch at 150 East and about 4300 North. And we will figure out what the roadway is called as the point.
I mean, for the record, I have a buddy, he's from Norway. He came to visit and he was in Moab and everything. And we were kind of chatting at my house. You know, he drove up from Moab and he said, Mountain Road's cool, man. He didn't, I mean, it was his first day here, you know, this Norwegian, I'm used to driving around the fjords and whatever. He thought that was cool. He thought the whole drive was cool. I would say all these opportunities for pocket commercial, I would say the only limitation that anyone would really have the most grievance would be parking. So I think having some sort of parking discussion in these scenarios would be ideal. I mean, it's just not dense enough for the neighborhood to completely function based on walkability to support a business. So you're going to need smaller buildings and larger parking areas.
I agree.
Then just to kind of throw out summary thoughts from myself, and it sounds like that was a great summary. And if anyone else has summary, I think that this is a really worthy thing for us to pursue is incorporating in our general plan. What I would just say though, is I don't know that our existing zoning is what we'd want to necessarily label as, just like you were saying with parking concerns, et cetera. Making these like commercial doesn't feel like the right thing. So I would say like, yes, but we should carve out something maybe unique or different for these pockets. Other
Yeah.
summary thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And
Call the zone something different, like.
Yes.
yeah, like neighborhood
center,
development or
Neighborhood
yeah,
center or something.
something that
That's
something that when-
definable.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's definable. And also when people are looking to do the development and when people are looking to see what's coming in, they go, okay, it's pretty well said just in the description of the zone, what the intent is. Cause I don't think you want to leave it loose. I don't think you want to Mickey D's.
No.
Right? I think even, I mean, maybe you do, but it's a restricted Mickey D's, no signage, no nothing. I think it really just needs to be at that scale. I think height requirements and everything get really, really, I mean, you got to keep it even lower maybe than the single family height requirements to really make it. So, you know, I'd be happy to do a little case study and pull some of these pocket neighborhoods and whatnot, you know, I worked on a public coffee in the avenues and they took over an old it was called a petrol station at the time. And they took it over. We redid the building and it was just fantastic. And even if you're not a coffee drinker, there's something to get there, you know, muffin, they had jalapeno cheddar cornbread muffins. I still remember them to this day.
That's a good coffee
But
shop.
just a place to go on your laptop with
Right.
light and I
Kids
don't
can
know.
ride the bike too and yeah.
But I don't think there's any restrictions on what area can support it. I just think it needs to be known that we will heavily restrict what goes there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, some of these useless properties that we've talked about, I think if they can't do a home and we all know it's unrealistic, then you spark that conversation. And do you want to join our neighborhood development program? We'll waive impact fees if you do this, if you bring in a sales tax producing type of development. I mean, I'm just playing the Donald Trump here, but anyway, I'm done. I'm done.
And maybe just add on the financial side, and you guys kind of know my background. And I recall our mayor's, not this letter, but the previous one where he talked about North Ogden City. You can't, if you're going to complain about your property taxes, then you're going to have to diversify. And North Ogden, Scott, if I remember right, was of our budget, 78% was financed by property taxes, and the average from other cities was like close to 10% different because of the commercialization.
Yeah.
Am I close on that, John?
Oh, Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the numbers he's
Yeah.
provided.
I guess the point was, don't complain about your property taxes if we're not going to
Yeah.
get some more commercialization going on. And this is right in line with that,
Mhm.
feels like to me.
Yeah.
And
It's just
now's
a
the-
perfect
And
timeline.
that's what I was gonna say. Now's the time.
Like retail died with Amazon, and with all of the new food joints going on, it's pretty apparent people have the extra money to go spend $5 on a latte or whatever. I just think it's a really good time to redefine what's going on.
So we like their zones, I think. Is
Yeah.
that what we're saying? We like how they've done that?
Yeah, any other, those are great summary thoughts and very, very helpful for me. I'll put all of this together for the staff report for Tuesday for next council or next week's council meeting. Any other summary thoughts that anybody has?
Just one last thing. So the world around us and affordability, and maybe this goes kind of opposite of what we're talking about. In the city's plan, it doesn't address that crazy thing that's going on right now. Does that play into this Wasatch Regional Council designations for the next 50 years? Does affordability of housing come into play there anywhere?
It should. So one of WFRC's key focuses is aligning land use and transportation. So you maximize the transportation investment by making sure that the land uses that surround it are very supportive. And so that's things like transit-oriented development. You know, we put hundreds of millions of dollars into rail and rail infrastructure. Those rail stops should not be devoid of houses surrounding them. They should be areas of compact development. And that's the same for our major transportation corridors everywhere, in my humble opinion. You know, thinking of Monroe, it's an 80-foot right of way. It would be a 5-lane corridor, so 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane for the majority of it. And those are areas where we should probably intensify the zoning, intensify the land uses around it. So that could mean smaller lot zoning, more affordable housing, housing that is used in some ways as like a buffer to our existing larger lot, more expensive single family housing. But WFRC, you know, they're more interested in their conversations about maintaining quality of life. Like the growth is coming, you can either plan for it and plan for it well as a city, or it's just going to kind of happen to you. And if we want to maintain our quality of life and relatively short ski lines and relatively short, you know, drives up to all of our recreational areas, like we should be thinking really strategically about where to densify. And North Ogden is sort of on the fringes of that because we're like a destination community. We don't have a freeway that comes through us, but I don't think we're immune from this densification. Like we are an area that's close enough to Ogden and close enough to Hill Air Force Base where these really large economic centers that we will be the recipient of some of those people who want to live in our area. And we should think about how to accommodate them so that we don't ruin the quality of life
I
we
should
all enjoy.
comment on Hill Air Force Base with the role I have at the university. Hill Air Force Base, in their last report, is the largest economic entity in the state, $12 billion. They have generational opportunities going on up there with the Sentinel program and a lot of others.
Yeah.
You can only imagine that is going to continue to bring in people, and especially with the world that we're living in. It's pretty shocking.
Yep.
The opportunities and economic development that's going to bring, whether we like it or not.
Right.
And they'll want to probably live in North Ogden too, I suspect.
Close enough to get there. And we're certainly close enough to get there. So, yeah. Cody, did you have something?
No, I think these are all great ideas. I think also we need to be real cognizant that there are a lot of North Ogden residents that have been here a long time that consider these spots very sacred ground. And it will be, you know, I think we'll get a lot of input from the citizens. And so,
I mean,
what you said.
Do you think the equestrian park is sacred ground, or do you think everyone looks at that hole in the side of the hill? Because it used to be a gravel pit. Then it was an
No,
equestrian park.
I mean, think about since I don't think we've mentioned the Public Works building yet, which is the only controversial topic that we haven't graced. But, you know, we talked about moving that there at one point, and it was like the city started on fire. So we just need to be really cognizant of the citizens and what they look at as that grows, right? So maybe present this as, hey, it can't be this forever. What do you want? You know, and maybe get their input as well. But I really like your idea of sort of, what was it, RFP?
Yeah, because I think the
Yeah.
RFP, someone's gonna, a landscape architect's gonna come in and say,
Yeah,
let's put a pond here and bring some ducks, that might go up on the table, but I'm just a big believer that,
Yeah.
a developer that it has a design background tends to show up to these RFPs. It's like their one shot to use their fun ideas to do it. And so, like you
Yeah.
said, present the options. And when you do present the options, I think when people are here with their strong opinions, when you're not saying we think we're going to do this, you go, well, we've narrowed
got
it
to.
down to these four. Let's have, make your vote. One of them's happening.
right.
That it's just like when I send a client to go look at tile. I don't tell them to go to a tile store and find tile. I say, go find a 12 inch by 24 inch gray tile. And they're happy. They walk in and they walk out with a piece of tile, So I think a little bit
No,
of that strategy helps with the community
Yeah,
response.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I am also a big proponent of these little neighborhood centers. I think it's great.
And I think you give
it's-
preference to a North Ogden resident if their idea is good. I think you
Absolutely.
give precedent or
Yeah.
preference to them
Yeah.
to hey, your idea is golden, you're a local person, you're invested. What can we do to help make this work?
Yeah.
A lot of those RFPs, they've deeded the property to make it feasible. They've done things they do things in a normal capitalist market wouldn't be possible. But they're able to do it because it works for the city long term. Because a lot of the projects that come through here, they're trying to be stabilized and profitable in a year. They want to be able to flip this and potentially put it on the market at a cap rate. Whereas North Ogden City, you're at a longer time frame, and you're thinking, what's the community benefit, the sales tax, or whatever it is. So I mean, anyway, I think it's just a fun
Maybe
topic.
the neighbor's opinion is one factor of
Yeah.
many. Yeah.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think this one's kind of fallen in our lap, and I think this is really, really probably appropriate for what a planning commission can do. I mean, we have to work with the planning department for a general plan and to execute that plan, but in a little pocket area like this, I think we could be really successful. I think this is probably the opportunity we've been waiting for, to do a little bit of that
Agreed.
planning.
And when are we, Scott, like general plan, like if we wanted to dig in and massage some of these ideas, is that like this year, next year?
It's this year for sure. So we have in the general plan, we have to do by the end of the year, our water element of the general plan that is due by December 31st, 2025. We have a really good culinary water study that's been done, and luckily North Ogden doesn't own any secondary water resources, so we only have to consult with Pine View and up the hill. Is it Marriott Water? Is it the same, or is it?
Mountain View.
Thank you,
Mountain
Mountain
View
View Irrigation.
Water.
So we have to consult with them on secondary water, but we don't have to plan for it, which is, I love that. And then we have all of our own culinary water resources. So we're in really good position water-wise compared to some of the communities who are buying water from like Weber Basin or other water providers. But that is a requirement. So we'll already be cracking the general plan open. We presented to you, I think last meeting or the meeting before, like 35 text amendments to the code. So there's a few things that precede that we want to get through and done, but it will be this year. We'll start to pick away at pieces of the general plan.
Thank you.
So just to sort of recap, what some of the things we talked about was like having this concept of a future land use area for some of these areas along particularly Monroe Boulevard and Mountain Road. And obviously that section that was way up north.
That's mountain way up there too.
Okay. I don't think it was exactly on Mountain Road, but it was that school property to the north. And then even potentially creating a new zone called neighborhood center and kind of define what that means. And that might be the point where
Yeah.
Commissioner Bailey came in, like, what are the parameters of the development in there?
Are we supporting what they are suggesting to Chair?
I think this is a perfect opportunity because it's kind of like they've laid out a good foundation plan for us in a
Sounds
way.
like we are, yeah.
I think this is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. That is
Commissioner Bailey, thank you.
all I
for
have
those
on that.
comments. That was very
that one,
helpful.
yeah.
Good idea.
Every once in a while, I'm over here.
Numbers two.
Just remember every once in a
Are
while.
we ready
Yeah,
for
every once in a while, something.
Yeah. Did you have anything more on the Wasatch Front Regional Council vision or just those?
Just that, yep, just
Okay.
that. Tom.
Well, let's go ahead and move on. I know we do have some members of the public here. Anybody have any comments that you'd like to make for? Anybody online, John?
We do have a raised hand.
Okay. Mr. Pulver?
Hey, so just wanted to add one more I don't know, thing into the mix when you were talking about planning and stuff like that. Somebody made the comment, and I don't remember who, talked to too many people on cemeteries. And the one that we have, I don't know what the build out of it is, but that's something else to think about. Because and that's something that I think it was one of the house, because he knows the Marriott's up there, and that might be with some of the part of the plan for up there too. So I'm not sure. And you said commercially something because of the weird area that where Mountain Road will eventually hook into where Pleasant View is. There's some kind of weird area between that and the steep slope that I don't know what they're going to do with it, if it can or if that would be a commercial area. Anyway, just thoughts that I've been kicking around and people have been asking about. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman.
I mean, it's a compost area right now. There's that new thing where
They compost.
they compost your body.
Yeah.
They turn you into a tree
Might be.
fertilizer.
There's your commercial use.
No, I think all of it, I mean.
Oh my
even-
word.
Even
Or
with
dog
Chris,
tree
thanks for the
farm.
comment. I mean, it was a little joke, but these are the types of things that I think if you put this together in an organized manner, there's going to be feedback. You know, I think we need to adjust the rules or know the rules, but I think we put together some ideas and see what the feedback is. And then if we can get to that RFP style thing, then yeah.
And interestingly enough, so in our zoning code, as it was rewritten, the Title 11 and reorganized, we had a neighborhood commercial portion of the zone. And in the RFP, I think with John Jansen, who helped us do that code, like there are plenty of neighborhood center type of codes that we can lean on, look at, the planning commission could massage for North Ogden. So it's referenced in Title 11 right now, but we don't have any zoning districts that are applied to it yet. And we could look at those standards or apply those standards and then create areas where we would zone for them. So it's like one, not unprecedented, and two, like ready-made in our Title 11, ready to go in some ways.
Mhm.
That's all I have for that item.
Planning commissioners, do you have any final remarks? Has any report from Community and Economic Development Director?
So we attended today the Northern Utah Economic Alliance, and it was well attended. It was down at the Ogden Eccles Center, and it had a series of economic developers, general developers, real estate professionals who presented to kind of a myriad of people. So there were elected officials there. There were folks from across several sectors. I know that Hill Air Force Base was there. I saw Weber County cities and also kind of outside of our area. And what I took from that is they talked a lot about site selection and sure sites and things like the Tyson Foods plant that came into West Jordan was one that was state incentivized, or you have Procter and Gamble and Kimberly Clark that we have more local here. and the inland port that's like 12th Street way west, right? You've got that whole area that's unincorporated county right now. And the way large businesses look at us is like from Provo to Brigham City. They don't identify individual cities. And it really kind of cemented for me the thinking that North Ogden doesn't have the room for 100,000 square feet of Class A office space. But that office space is going to come to our region. So we need to be able to provide for potentially workforce housing, or in other ways like housing for the people who are going to work in those places. And you've got thousands of square feet of room, well, the MIDA development. So just off where the Hill Air Force Base entrance is from Roy, there is tens of thousands of square feet of Class A office space going in right now, and bringing in national contractors and folks from, you know, Boeing and Lockheed Martin and other aerospace engineering type firms that have really high paying jobs. And North Ogden is a very short drive to that location. So I think for North Ogden, what we could provide, if we could do anything, would be provide for really good housing choice, and then make sure that the economic development that we develop here is meets the needs of our users, which is kind of like a destination community, or we need more like 5 to 9 p.m. type of uses in North Ogden, I would say. But it just, I thought it was really interesting, and to especially hear several people talk about how our region as a whole is looked at like this big, you know, as a large region, and that no one is micro focused on any one individual community. So we've got to think large in terms of what North Ogden provides on even like a countywide regional scale.
You know, I participate in that, the Northern Utah Economic Alliance, and I'm sure I couldn't make it, but Chris Roybal, I'm sure he talked.
Yep, Chris was there.
That's an interesting organization. They were created about 5 years ago. Weber County and Davis kind of helped finance it, the governor's office as well as others, to quit fighting amongst the entities, the county and the cities, and work together to identify these opportunities that are pretty shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
The things that are going to be going into Northern Utah. And yeah, I'm glad I wish I could have made it, but that is an outstanding organization that has a lot of resources that we could plug into to help us with planning too. Have they inventoried any of our land? I can't remember them inventorying any of our land. Are we interested in doing some of that?
I don't know that we have enough. I mean, I guess we could potentially look, but we have very limited land left for commercial
Okay,
development in North
okay.
Ogden. It's more like redevelopment areas, but they're inventorying like dozens of
Big.
acres, large sites that are looking at critical infrastructure needs, and there's some infill, but think more like Northwest Weber County, where you have greenfield development. You can go in, you can put in something really large. I would say that I'd be shocked if we landed anything of like a national level, unless maybe we get like the gondola and major Olympics infusement or something like that. But otherwise, we're really not as,
But I like the idea of there's this wave that gets
Yeah.
created that we could plug in. I like what you're saying there.
absolutely, yeah. It was interesting, I thought, and the city has, or the mayor has asked for quarterly economic development updates, so that'll be part of it. What happened at Barker Depot will be part of it. And then just know that as a planning commission, you'll be busy over the next several weeks and months, just because we've got a large amount of development that's moving our direction, and we keep, you know, we're hearing about, we're getting applications. We're just readying those for planning commission to review. I don't know. I don't know if Ryan has anything to add.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Call?
Nothing new and exciting.
Well, everyone, thank you for the great discussion tonight. Like,
Motion to
entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
There we go.